Oh no, you're fine.
It's all there. Yeah, for this area.
Hi, kia ora everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. Just wanting to reference here, given that we're at a site where we have a number of apprentices. I think I counted 4 who are apprentices or have newly started on the job here, and that is essentially part of our very strategic focus on investing in infrastructure, creating a pipeline of work where new trainees are able to find opportunities and find employment. We are seeing the benefit of that. In the GFC, we saw a significant downturn in apprenticeships. People in apprenticeships lost their apprenticeships, and the number of people training fell away. What we've tried to do is work alongside our training institutions, incentivise apprenticeships by making study free, and also support employers to take them on, and we're seeing the benefit of that. In fact, Warwick just shared with us
I have a graph.
a graph demonstrating here the 2020 figures here for trainees and apprentices, and you can see here the 2019 figures. This just reflects the level 3 status in Auckland, but you can see relative to July, since July 2020, we've had 4,579 compared to 1,700 in the year prior. So that is demonstrating what a difference these investments are making. We've also brought together, and in a release today, some of the pipeline of infrastructure projects that we see in different parts of the country. We're aware that through the projects that we've invested in as part of COVID recovery, the PGF, land transport, and the upgrades, significant amounts of work going into different parts of the country. And this was an opportunity to compile some of that and demonstrate what a difference it's making. $5 billion worth in the lower North Island, which is creating a pipeline of infrastructure projects and work which will help with our COVID recovery. It is part of our plan. We have very deliberately invested in those areas where we've had skills gap, where we need a workforce. You can see one just out here who stopped for a moment to observe this stand up. But happy to take questions.
Are you confident in the COVID climate that construction has enough confidence to take on apprentices and has enough work to support that?
I think the confidence has to be built in 2 ways. Firstly, supporting employers, particularly through this period, and we've done that through wage subsidies, and we're already seeing that has made a difference. They are taking on trainees. Secondly is by creating a pipeline of construction and infrastructure. We're doing that as well. $3 billion just through the COVID recovery and response. That was on top of our announcements earlier in the year as part of the Big New Zealand upgrade as well.
National says under its watch construction would have been allowed to continue and the recession wouldn't be as deep. Could you have motivated the depth of this recession?
Well, you can actually see from what we've just shown you that we are seeing an increase in the number of people training on the job and coming into the sector. That's exactly what we need right now. When you compare that with the GFC, the last time we saw New Zealand face such significant economic troubles, we actually saw apprentices fall away. That's why I backed Labour's plan, because we can already see it's working.
Sure, but if construction...
I'll do it, Gina, and then I'll come to you.
So if you had allowed this construction under level 4, would we be in the same position with GDP as we are today?
Well, of course, keeping in mind that some of the significant blows that we've experienced around GDP do relate to the very thing that's also given us economic freedom and the opening up of our economy, and that was our borders. So yes, we have seen that we've lost international tourism. That will have an impact, but at the same time, we have had prolonged periods where we've had full economic activity, including construction, all the way through level 3.
Is it fair to
construction to go ahead under level 4, say, or level 3? Is that realistic, or do you think that's a responsibility?
Well, keep in mind that over this entire period, 7 months or so worth, we only had a period really of 6 weeks where that wasn't happening. Then, of course, the level 3 restrictions, people were back on site, back on the job. And what we're seeing is that actually we're seeing good growth in apprentices, in trainees, in areas where we want to grow the number of people on the job, because we are investing in infrastructure projects that require people with those skills.
Is it fair to compare New Zealand and Australia?
Well, a lot of that comparison happens, and so look, that's up to others as to whether or not they choose to make that comparison. I'm happy with that comparison to be made because on a number of areas we are faring very, very well, and that's in spite of the fact that actually international tourism means twice as much to us as it does to Australia.
I mean, obviously, if you compare it unemployment, our peak is going to be significantly lower than Australia's. We're going to come out of this year with our debt a little lower than Australia's. Our growth and our rebound out of this will be faster and quicker. And I think that's the whole point. Our strategy was to go hard and to go early, to get on top of the virus. And then in the September quarter, you'll see the rebound from that. We already know, the New Zealand Activity Index for July was 2% up on July 2019. So I back our approach. I think we compare well with Australia on a number of fronts, and we'll see that as time goes on.
I think one of the key questions here, it's not just about what's happened over that June quarter in terms of the effect of lockdown. It's actually about the rebound. And I back New Zealand's rebound. I think we're already seeing that we were able to open up a lot more quickly. We're seeing activity picking up. Even with some of the more recent restrictions, we've seen a return to activity. Whereas, compared to Australia, we are in a much better position.
On the rebound,
Yeah,
on the rebound, would you say that then we're now on the other side of the recession?
Well, a technical recession is two quarters of negative growth in a row, and there's no doubt that the September quarter will see us rebound significantly. The point being that this was our strategy, and GDP is just one measure of the overall health and well-being of a country. The fact that we were able to get through this 1 in 100 year shock with very limited number of deaths, they're all sad, but compared to other countries, we've done significantly better in that regard, and on indicators like unemployment.
Yeah, my question would be, what's your measure of success? In a global pandemic, what do we measure success on? Success for me is saving people's lives, supporting and saving people's businesses, and coming out the other side faster and quicker and with more activity out the other side, and that is what we're seeing in New Zealand.
Could a recession under Labour, hand National the win in the election?
Look, I back our results. I back the fact that we are, because of our response of going hard and going early, in a position now where we have people back on the job, we're growing apprentices, and we have a huge pipeline of infrastructure coming on stream. I back our approach and our plan because it has worked.
And just your response, though, to the actual magnitude of the number out today, 12.2%?
Well, look, actually, relative to where people thought we would be some months ago, it's come in obviously lower. People have been revising their forecasts based on just the speed at which we came out of those alert levels, the speed of the recovery. And so, look, and not unexpected, but as I've said, for me, it's not just what that quarter is showing us, it's about the rebound thereafter. And we're putting a lot of energy through our 5-point plan into making sure that rebound is solid and that we are building back stronger as a result.
And let's be absolutely clear here. There is no way that any political party could claim that there would not have been a recession in New Zealand during this period of time. This is a 1 in 100 year global economic shock. The number sits alongside similar numbers in Canada and the EU and so on. We have a particular profile in our economy where some of the exposed sectors like tourism are more affected, and we went harder and we went early. And as the Prime Minister says, it's about the rebound, and we've already seen that in New Zealand.
When you took on the job as Finance Minister, did you ever think you would see a 5.2 drop in GDP?
Of course not, and obviously, this is a 1 in 100 year shock. What I do know, though, is that the New Zealand economy is resilient and it's robust, and you're seeing that right here today.
As Finance Minister, does it worry you that Treasury yesterday predicted a 16% drop, and today you've got a 12%?
Economic forecasting is always more of an art than a science. The Treasury's forecasts have been revised down. They actually started at 23%, as most of the bank economists did, towards 20%, and they've come down. That's actually a result of the fact that the New Zealand economy has held up better than expected.
Does it mean that all of the other forecasts in the pre-coup yesterday maybe on the pessimistic side?
It just shows that a 10-year forecast is pretty difficult if that's what you're out by.
What it actually does mean is we will now start from a better base in terms of the forecasts than what Treasury did. So when we come to the half-yearly economic update just before Christmas, we'll actually have a better base to move on from. Look, different forecasters take different approaches. In fairness to the Treasury, they close their forecast off in about the 21st of August, so a bit more data came in for June after that. It is really important to remember this is backward-looking data. Where we are right now today in New Zealand is an economy that is up and going again.
Can Labour actually deliver on an infrastructure plan to help boost the economy?
Yes.
National says that you've proven that you can't.
And of course I would refute that. It's election time, so of course you'll get a bit of banter back and forth in that regard. But look, ultimately we have already generated an investment plan that's seeing, for instance, $400 million going into our state schools across the country. That is already underway. I was just down in Dunedin, where of course we're starting the work, and already the demolition is going on for the build of Dunedin Hospital, the largest hospital build in the country. The remedial work that we've done up at Counties Manukau are just some examples of projects that we already have underway. Our plan is to continue to expand those because the last national government did not invest in infrastructure.
What would you do differently this time around?
Oh, sorry, Ben, I'll let you go.
New South just reported that the third straight day there's no cases in the community of COVID-19.
Yes.
This is obviously good news, and it does mean that New Zealand's on track to downscale its restrictions. Is that right?
Look, certainly that is what we were looking for those decisions that we'll be making at confirmation of our plan that we'll be making on Monday on the final advice of the Director General. What we've always said, of course, is that, yes, the cases that we have, that's what we track. We also look just at the wider risk profile and what the modelling's telling us. All of that helps inform the Director General's advice.
How would you do
It does paint us
It does say, look, we're on track. Our plan, once again, is working. It's doing what we intend. We always need to just be a bit cautious because we are a country who's adopted a strategy of eliminating and then going to full freedoms. So you have to be careful that when you go to those full freedoms, you're ready.
How much of the COVID restrictions?
Oh, I'll go to. Sorry?
Would Labour reduce taxes on cigarettes? It's
No.
something Winston Peters wants to see.
No.
Would you negotiate on that with him?
No. You'll recall that in the last term of government that has been an area where we had legislated increases which we continued with. The leader of New Zealand First has always taken a different view on that, but we maintain the perspective that ultimately we want people to stop smoking in New Zealand, and that has been one of the tools that around the world is used to help reduce smoking.
Would you like to see him stop smoking?
That is a decision for him.
Would you chat to him about his smoking?
Have I ever had a chat with Winston Peters about his smoking? No. I really appreciate that you think that would be the case. So.
How did it go?
No.
How much have the COVID restrictions impacted your ability to campaign?
Oh, look, actually, I haven't found it particularly limiting. One of the things that we have had to alter is we've often had rallies. Obviously, those we've had one called off this weekend. Obviously, we're not having those. But I don't think that affects our ability to reach voters. Rallies often engage those who have already made up their mind, for instance, and so for us, it's those chances to engage with people as part of their everyday life, on the job, out on the street. That's where you meet people who are less committed to their vote.
Has there been a sort of barrier to engaging with people in Auckland because of being in 2.5?
No, I've been in Auckland. Look, of course, much more mindful, of course, of making sure that your groups are designated in a particular way. Work sites can still be visited, schools can still be visited. So, no, I haven't found it particularly limiting.
Winston Peters says this is the worst campaign ever. How do you feel about it?
Is that because of the price of cigarettes?
Look, that's up to him. But again, actually, our freedoms, when you think about the rest of the country, yes, you can't have more than 100 people, but other than that, fairly open outside of Auckland.
What would you do differently this time around if you're in a position to form coalition?
To form coalition, what would I do differently in the negotiations, in the government? Oh, well, look, certainly in terms of the negotiations, at that point in time, that was an entirely new experience. There's very few, in fact, the past Prime Ministers may not have even negotiated a blind negotiation with two parties. What I am seeking is the strongest mandate possible because, yes, I can make coalitions work, but they are not without complication.
So you'd rather not?
Oh, I'm not banking on that at all. We are an MMP environment. We are used to having coalition partners and confidence and supply partners. I've proven I can make even the most complex version of those work, but it is fair to say there is a simplicity to not having quite so many arrangements.
New Zealand First to
Yeah, that's
Does New Zealand need escalating house prices, and
restart of high immigration in order to dig itself out of the long tail of this COVID economic
No,
crisis?
I think if your only way to recover is through a strategy around immigration and increasing house prices, that was actually the last government strategy. It's never been one we've bought into. You can see from our 5-point plan, our view is that we can grow the economy through investment in research and development, those areas that are creating high-wage jobs, through investment in our exporters, by backing our small businesses. Our view is that you've got to have a much more diverse economic plan than just house price growth and immigration.
And I would say the visit that we just did earlier today to Food HQ is a really great example. And our first industry transformation plan that we've developed with Business New Zealand and the Council of Trade Unions is in agri-tech. It's about how we add value to what we're good at doing in the primary industries and food and beverage. And I saw things today that are the generator of high-wage jobs. So that has to be a critical part of how we rebuild the economy.
We'll take the last couple. Yep.
How do you curb the housing crisis, given the sort of headwind we're facing?
You use this time to build. We've already committed to an additional 8,000 public houses, for instance. Our view is this is where we should be using KiwiBuild as well to support private residential development on an ongoing basis as well. In the GFC, we saw a dip. It's not what we need in a time when we both have housing need and we also need to be stimulating growth.
So can we expect some KiwiBuild announcements? Is that...
Well, already, actually, the way that KiwiBuild is designed to try and ensure that where you have, for instance, a lesser likelihood of development otherwise occurring, we can step in. So underwrites and so on.
Hold up to the public this election?
Sorry?
Is it a policy that you're going to hold up to the public?
It's still in existence and it's still doing the job that at this time is required. Underwrite, for instance, other mechanisms that allow development to go ahead in times that often developers pull their foot off the pedal.
There's also a fundamental piece of work in terms of how we organise building and infrastructure in New Zealand, and so the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, the Infrastructure Funding and Financing Act, the reforms of the Resource Management Act, all of those fundamental underpinnings are an important part of making sure that we build more houses more quickly.
I believe
Is there a
Ben
case
had
for having
there was
another
a
look at-
sports
Oh.
question.
Well, I was just going to ask about the precedent you've set in terms of quarantine for the Wallabies. Does that provide a baseline for other sports? Obviously, cricketers will look at wanting to come here. Potentially, Matilda's football fans have been mooted as well. Will you look at modifying quarantine?
It's a
rates
fetching
as well?
cricket hat you're wearing, Ben, actually today too. Yes, yes, that is true. I mean, what we've learned in the process of working through the arrangements with the Wallabies, we are using. We're in very active discussions with netball and cricket, and I would hope to be able to make announcements about those in the coming days.
New Zealand First says its bottom line is to sign off on economic strategy. Would you agree to that?
Sign off on their...
On economic strategy.
Right. Look, all I would say is that we don't get into the business of negotiating coalition agreements during an election campaign. My job's to campaign for Labour, for Labour's 5-point economic plan, for our recovery and response to COVID-19, and that's what I'll keep doing.
His new
Getting
line
back to
appears to
housing.
be, don't let them stuff the country. What do you say to that?
Again, I'm campaigning for Labour, and I'll let the leader of New Zealand First campaign for his party.
Just getting back to housing and looking at the role that the Reserve Bank is playing at the moment, is there a case in the next government for having another look at the Reserve Bank to prevent it sort of pouring petrol on the house price flow?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's really important to me that we maintain independent monetary policy. That will always be a plank of what we believe in. We've made some changes to the way the Reserve Bank operates, and we'll keep working with them. One thing I would say is that monetary policy is evolving. Things that we used to think of as unconventional, like quantitative easing, are now commonplace around the world. So, of course, we'll continue to look at it, but I don't have any plans for any major significant restructuring in that regard.
Okay. So last one.
Given you now have a new candidate and given the exit of the last MP.
Yes, I absolutely do. And not to place any unreasonable expectations on our candidate, the reason for that confidence is actually because he is so well grounded in the community. Having had such a senior role in local government here, he's well known and already well appreciated locally, and I think that will only add to the story that Labour has to tell here. I should really let you speak things out. No. Anything you want to add?
Well, Prime Minister, just to say that I'm delighted to be the Labour candidate. We're not taking anything for granted. The team and I have been out with the constituents, and I look forward to ensuring that this seat remains a Labour seat and am able to be a strong voice in a Labour-led government.
Did Elise Galloway's exit sort of a rocky start perhaps to your campaign?
I don't think so. I think the reality is that we needed a new candidate, and I'm that person.
You needed a new candidate.
Well, because he exited, so it's just a statement of fact. All right, thanks everyone. I'm wrapped. I'm going to call it there. You can ask me tomorrow. All right, thanks everyone.